All right. Welcome to the Jake Blanchard podcast. Megan Reuwer is an author, a speaker, a coach, a wife, a mama, so many things. And I'm glad her and I got a chance to connect and record a podcast together. Her story is motivating. Her energy is undeniable. Check her out, Megan Maloney Reuwer on Facebook. Sparkle Shine Megan on Instagram. The notes will be filled with links to go find Megan Reuwer. You know, hey, I shouted out recently asking you guys to leave some reviews on the podcast, leave some ratings on the podcast. I said I'd read them. I got one right here from Luke. Always enjoy a podcast of growth-minded folks. Jake does a great job creating conversational podcasts while still extracting the gems of wisdom from his expert guests. That's awesome. Thanks for the review, Luke. Definitely appreciate that. Also, if you're listening on the podcast, feel free, leave a comment, review the show, leave a rating, subscribe. All those things help us show up better in search. So continue to support the growth of the podcast. I appreciate it. Shout out real quick to our friends, Few Will Hunt. Everybody wants to eat, but few will hunt. They make fantastic clothing, athletic wear, fight wear, and so much more. When you go to fewwillhunt.com, use that code JBP at checkout. Get yourself 15% off your order. And then also my friends, dear friends at Fellowship Brand, premium men's grooming products. They are releasing so many new cool products, including shampoo, beard wash, and more. Check them out, fellowshipbrand.com. And when you're checking out, use that code JBP at checkout. Save yourself some money on some beard butter. Enjoy the show with the outstanding Megan Reuwer. All right, welcome to a brand new episode of the Jake Blanchard podcast. I'm with a seasoned entrepreneur today, a leader, a mentor, a coach, someone who's helped work from home women achieve six-figure incomes, but she's so much more than that. And I'm looking to diving in. Megan Reuwer, what a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. What a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited today. You're a very interesting person, at least externally. I'm glad we made connection on the old interwebs.
Me too.
To have you on the show today. I think what's fascinating is the way that you have gravitated into a space to build leaders, to coach through sales, to help people find balance in life, how you've balanced many of the things in your own life as well. So excited to go on that journey, but help us get anchored in. Who's this Megan Reuwer person that I've got on the show today, and wherever it makes sense to start.
All right. Well, I am, like Jake said, a seasoned entrepreneur. I'm in, I think, my fourth venture, all successful, but my passion for sure is helping others be successful. Really women. I'm a mom of four and been married for almost 18 years to my best friend.
Oh, that's I love that. That's awesome.
Yep. It's the only way to do it. I really am a creative. And so every time I have an idea, I want to partner with companies or people to really help them be empowered in who they are and just move forward the way that I learned to do by just kind of doing it. So I started as a hairstylist, like I shared a little bit, and then it moved into a more built out business and continued to coaching, and on we go. So that's a little bit about me. I have a couple special needs kids. And so it became a priority for us to figure out how to fit work into life. Instead of building life around work, we built our life and then built work into it. So, and I can't do anything I'm not passionate about. Ask anyone who knows me. So entrepreneurship has kind of been the only route for me because I can create it around our life with the needs of our children and be home, which is really a privilege.
So you just touched on having children with special needs. I have a few families that are close to our families who have children with special needs. I know that from personal experience, so this personal experience of viewing.
Yes.
It is a paradigm shift in the way that you approach things in your life. And how long ago, how old are your children?
Okay, so my oldest is 15, and then my son Phoenix is 13, and he was born with spina bifida and wheelchair. He's paralyzed from the waist down. So, and then my daughter Penelope is 11, and Genevieve is 9, and Genevieve also has spina bifida and HLHS, which is a heart defect. So she has use of her legs, but she's still also mainly dependent on a wheelchair. So yes, it is a paradigm shift, as you said, for sure. From day one, we've kind of just felt like, well, we do feel children are a gift, and I feel it's a privilege to empower them into the gifts that they are and to give them every opportunity to live that out. So, did we know we would get multiple special needs kids? There's nothing genetic that's ever shown up for any of us. So, it's been a wild journey. But the truth is, it's all we've ever known. So, and for your friends, it depends on like the birth order and things like that. But first of all, thank you for being a support to friends who live this reality, because I always say we couldn't carry it without our people. But also, second of all, I think the paradigm shift for me was just knowing, one of the spaces I have to live in is like with our children's complex medical needs. Their lives may be much shorter than a typically developing child, which there's no control of those things anyway. So you just release control. And I think every day I just love them and empower them as much as I possibly can, in a different way, because the reality of time is there, which is there for all of us. But when there's this shrinking down of like, oh, one surgery in their life might be it. It really gives you a different perspective of the value of life. And so we live in that as much as possible. Now, don't get me wrong. We have our off moments. We all do.
Right.
We're human. Like, I might be a little annoyed sometimes.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But yeah, that's kind of like the space we have chosen to live in, both my husband and I. He's been home, and so we've kind of co-partnered the parenting role for years. Since when my second business took off, he was like, you can't do all the appointments. So our kids have PT, OT, just doctor's appointments, surgeries, recoveries. So we kind of, it's in the flow of our week. And so that really requires someone fully hands-on. And even with the flexibility, which there are flexibility where I can do it sometimes, he just was like, let me manage that. So that has been awesome for our kids to have that really solid. I think kids overall are very much more emotional around their moms, and then they can be more solid and grounded around their dads. And so it's been a
Yeah.
great rhythm for us.
I see that firsthand, the emotional around mom, and
Yeah.
a little tougher around that. My son's a he's a lacrosse player, and he'll take a
I
big
love
hit,
that.
and if I'm there, he just kind of wears the face. And
Mhm.
then the second he'll get into the car sometimes, or my wife will pick him up sometimes, and he'll just start bawling. I'm like, dude, you were just fine. Like, what's going on with that?
Yes. Oh,
Oh
yes.
man.
I could tell you tons of stories about our kids, the same, where my husband would always be like, I don't understand. And
They
I'd
were
be like, it's just because they're more
Oh yeah,
um, vulnerable with their moms. They
I
just feel
know.
more vulnerable.
I always look at her, I was like, they were just fine. Like they were literally just fine. And
And she's
yeah,
probably like, I know, it's so annoying.
I know. Yeah, that's it. Hey, if you could, I could use an education on the condition of spina bifida. Is that how you say it
Okay. Yeah.
correctly?
Absolutely.
I
Yes.
I don't understand the condition.
Okay.
So very
Yeah.
little experience
I'd
with it.
love to expand on it. So, spina bifida is a congenital birth defect, and it happens in the first 21 days of pregnancy. The baby is actually like a tube at start. So they always said, think of like a pasta tube, and both ends seal, and that's the spine. If one of the ends doesn't seal, it leaves an opening in the spine that the amniotic fluid then causes nerve damage. Depending on where the defect is on the spine, can cause nerve damage. So it impacts their bowels and bladders, um, like how they operate. So they need
Mm,
support like enemas and things like that. And then also there's surgeries to help long term so that they can have that independence of, but like my 13 and 9-year-old are still diapered. So because those surgeries are a little ways out, well, they're coming up, but and all the way down to how your muscles and nerves interact in your, like, from your waist down. So it's different for each child. Phoenix is it one of the most severe cases. He also had what was called kyphosis in his spine. So it curved out instead of like scoliosis curves to the side. So he was a very severe case in how long his opening was before he had surgery after he was born. So he had more damage. And then Genevieve's was at a different spot on the spine, meaning less. So it's very interesting having two kids who are really actually almost not quite opposite spectrum, but like the things that Phoenix's ball and bladder do, like the testing and things like that, are very different than Genevieve. So it's been kind of this like, oh, we're seasoned. Oh, no, we're not. Like, so we're learning all the time. So spina bifida is actually one of the more prominent congenital birth defects, but it's because it ranges so wide. Oftentimes you may not even know a child has it. So there's some kids that look like have completely, but they'll have weakness. So they'll be doing PT and OT. So that's kind of with our daughter Genevieve, her muscles and everything doesn't fire together. So like I always explain it, like when we put our foot on the ground, our leg immediately knows to stand and support ourselves, right? All those nerves and everything working together doesn't work the same because it was damaged in utero. So it's kind of a wild reality.
Does the condition affect mental acuity?
So a lot of these children with spina bifida will have what's called Chiari syndrome, which is it's to do with the brainstem and can put pressure. So they'll usually have a shunt, which each child's so unique. So Phoenix does have some cognitive delays and Genevieve does not. So but she does have some emotional delays. So the part of the brain that they say that it really can be impacted with spina bifida is executive function. So our ability to calm ourselves in decisions that have heightened emotions, or to think, clear out forward, like that. The responses for both of them can be a little like intense and big until they can have more time to register. And that's a very common understood part of kids with spina bifida because of the brain development that they might lack, or their executive function might not be as fluid as ours is. So but yeah, so Phoenix is more like a 9-year-old at a 13-year-old age. So he's a little bit further back in school on purpose between the pandemic, being home, and then he was out of school for almost 2 years with surgeries and recoveries. So so he's doing well, but there is definite cognitive delay. And I think early on they knew that, but even his speech was very slow. So he didn't start talking until he was almost 4.
Okay.
So some of those things appeared, but it's kind of, you're always waiting it out to see what's what. So it is wildly wide variety. I know so many parents whose children are really doing well. ADHD is another huge trait of kids with spina bifida. So that can be a challenge for a lot of kids in school if they, have that going on, which can be of typically developing children too, but with just their other demands, that can be and that goes hand in hand with the executive function piece. So.
Okay. And so we talked about a paradigm shift, things happening in life. So professionally, what were you doing at the time that you had your second child?
So we were at that point, we were in the military. I was fully stay at home. I did a little hair on the side, but we had moved we were living in Wisconsin to San Antonio when my husband was in the military and I was pregnant with him.
I can hear a little Wisconsin in your voice.
Yes.
Just a little bit.
Little that Midwest girl.
For sure. So then you guys moved to Texas.
Yes. So we were there for 2 years. So I really that was probably one of the seasons. I was doing some content creation then, but I really wasn't running a business at that point. It's kind of a pause button to just really hone in and focus on his needs. That first year, it was 40 hours a week of doctor's appointments. So it was a
full-time job. Holy smokes.
Yeah. He had 20 specialists at 3 different hospitals because we were a military family, and PT and OT 4 days a week. It was intense. And it was like a very, woo, how do I do all this? So I'm glad that I wasn't running a career then. And then when we got back, we moved back from being stationed in San Antonio. I went back to starting here, and then I started my next venture, and that was in direct sales world.
So are you an accidental entrepreneur, or are you a person who has always liked entrepreneurship and then really invested and found time and built that capability out on purpose?
I love that question. I would say I was always drawn towards it, and it was very much was modeled and from my father. But um, the I I look back and I think, yeah, I was accidental.
Okay.
I left the salon industry because I wanted to have more freedom, time freedom, but I still loved that work and that creative outlet. And so as a mom, I just decided to build a salon in my house and then make it very successful and then take on another side job that grew into. So yes, I think it was very accidental. Now I would say, no, it's what I've always been interested in. I just wasn't introduced or kind of saw a lot of entrepreneurs. So it wasn't like, oh, I know what that is until I understood what it was. Like if you can run a business and you can make all these key things work together and build it successfully. Oh, there you go. You're an entrepreneur. And I was like, oh, I guess I am.
There you go. I love it. And there's something about, and I've interviewed a lot of business coaches. I've interviewed quite a few entrepreneurs, and I like to consider myself in that category as
Yes,
well to some
absolutely.
degree. And what I find is at some point in time, you find the confidence in order to say, okay, I've proved out the way that I operate. Original thought is so difficult to come by, but the connecting of the dots and the putting it into your words, into your systems, the way that you view, the way that you can take others' perspectives or their current state and help them transition into something that's more meaningful for them, help them find balance, ask them difficult questions that they may not be advocating for their self on
Yes, yes.
at a particular point in time is certainly a gift. It's one that takes patience, it takes time, it takes distilling down that ecosystem of
Mhm.
whatever you're niching over to. When did you decide that you were going to help others find their optimal balance of entrepreneurship as well as life?
Yeah, I think those things, like you said, when you're living it, you continue to create like what works for you. And what had happened in my second business was I started to grow a team because I love to support people. I love connection. I love helping. And so as this team started growing, I I'm very intuitive in the way of like you have what it takes. Like if you want to do this and build it big, here's how we're going to do it together. And so creating content became very, very natural to me quickly. Like, okay, we're going to make this program. We're going to take a bunch of girls through it. We're going to get them to six figures. And so that wasn't something my company offered. And so it was just me and one of my best friends who led the team with me. We just went for it. And at that point, watching other people women come alive in who they are and in their gifts and seeing, then the ball is rolling, then they're impacting lives. These other lives are changing. There's more who want it because it's being modeled. And so, yeah, that was, and then I realized, about 5 years into that, as the success started growing, that I was coaching and I loved it. It sets my soul on fire. And so I was like, okay, I want more training around this. And then that's where I kind of then dove into that. So it's exactly what you said. It was an evolving understanding and confidence bringing that I was, oh, I'm gifted at this. I'm good at this. I'm really intuitive at seeing people's strengths and pulling them out of them and helping them develop and move forward. And also saying, like, okay, what are your values and how do we align this job with those values? So if your value is communication, how do we get you out there really connecting and communicating more? Like, and your business can look different than this person's business, and just kind of giving people the freedom to fit it into their life according to their value system. And so for some, if they have a husband who works, 60 hours a week or travels, their business was going to look different and their journey was going to look different. And that was unique to them. And I always wanted to empower everyone to figure out how to do it in alignment with who they were. And that's been one of my greatest, and that's a journey, as you know, like learning about yourself in the midst of your roles and in the midst of your career. It just takes time, and it takes distance. I heard this quote, like, patience is the gift. So at first I felt crazy doing it all at home, and then slowly I found little, I always say, micro pockets of learning how to let go of some things I thought I had to carry, like making dinner every night or being on top of the laundry always, and then just being able to also empower other women to have those freedoms to either hire someone to come support you in your home, or to just let go of some of those really judgy expectations we can have. So yeah, I hope that answered the question.
No, I think it answers it really well. In fact, I would like to auger in a little bit more on your perspective on there are different ways of doing things and giving people the confidence to define what that is in their life. Like, that is such a hard thing to overcome, because I think a lot of times people, they look at jobs in a very linear fashion.
Mhm.
If you're a banker has a job that looks like this, and you need to
Mhm.
act this way. And we're so exposed to these kind of, like, roles with a clear scope of practice. But
Yep.
a parent slash entrepreneur slash somebody who's trying to find balance in their life, that can look a million different ways. That could look like 5 hours of work a week, and that could look like 50 hours of work a week. And
Yes.
having the confidence to clearly define and manage your expectations to such, I think, is the difficult exercise.
Yes. Well, there is this huge piece in culture of comparison, right? Like, we're looking to our left and our right to figure out, like, I think that would work for me, and I think that would work for me, and now I'm going to mush it all together. And so I just try to really take that off people's plate and say, who are you? What do you want? What's important to you? And how do we build your passions into your life? And that was our goal, right? Like, I wanted to be beside my son when he was recovering from a surgery. And so I needed to be able to work from my phone or computer, right? And I needed to be able to delegate and have a support system that could really carry things in those intense seasons. And so for me, I've always looked at it like, what season are you in? If you're in a season of growth, then it's going to take more time, focus, effort. If you're in a season of just reaping, where you're just like, things are fluid and flowing, then, like, you can shift gears to what your new goals are. And one of my big, I was in sales. So sales is just like, it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down, it's up and down. So I would always really teach my team, like, when it's down, this is your time to rest and take, like, inventory of what's on for you or what feels off. So, like, maybe your connection with one of your kids feels out of sorts, or maybe you and your husband haven't had a good solid date night in a long time. Make those happen in the slower seasons instead of stressing, which we can do, right? When business ebbs and flows, we can stress in the ebb, like, oh my gosh, is it going to come back together? Instead, it's kind of pausing and being like, okay, what is this time for? This time and this slowness has something to give me. And so I think that's a huge part of how I have to live, because it's like surgery, recovery for so many years. It's like surgery, recovery. That's like a pause button, or like a slower season in my life. And then it's like, okay, back in. So because it was the rhythm of our circumstances, it really taught me that it's also can be the rhythm of our life by choice. But there's a lot of
Yeah.
choosing involved, and you really have to take other people's lives. And that's how we have to live. Like, we do not, because people will always say to us, well, I can't imagine what you carry. And I can't, it's nothing compared to your life. And me and my husband always smile. And I'm like, well, I could say the same thing about you, because you have
Yeah.
circumstances that I don't carry. We don't look at life like yours are better or worse, or ours are better or worse. This is our life. And so we want to do it well. But that means always assessing how to do that best for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. And I think there's a key personality trait in there that's outwardly expressed. People can see it in you that you've risen to the occasion.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like that,
thank
hey,
you.
look at you. You are a person who's willing to say, I've been with this man for almost 20 years,
Yeah.
married. It's my best friend. That's how you started this podcast, right?
Yeah.
You're very it seems like clear-headed around the family obstacles that you need to navigate, and you just
Mhm.
pour love into your family, and then you say, hey, also I have energy and I have things to give to others and I have
Yep.
things to put out into the world. And I think when folks admire that and they see that and they see you rise to the occasion, I think the I don't know, maybe sometimes there's folks that are just sitting there going, man, I don't know if I'd be able to do it. I don't know if I'd be able to do it
Mhm.
with so much grace. I don't know if I'd be able to do it in that way. So it's hard to see what they're dealing with internally, because it's so, like, yours is so external with your family
Yes.
and the things
Yep.
that you've got going on. So I definitely appreciate that. I want to pivot a little bit more though
Yep.
into I want to talk about authenticity. I want to talk about imposter syndrome. I want to talk about
Great.
when people have a notion of who they are, but need to change aspects of that. Not who, like, they don't have to change who they are, but they have to change the way they communicate with the world, maybe, or
Yes.
the way that they perceive business, or they have to overcome a hurdle of, I have not been this person for X amount of years. And in order to be successful in this way, I need to do things differently, but that's not me. I don't feel authentic. I feel like an imposter. And I know I feel like that all the time. I feel like that sometimes with the podcast. I'll have a conversation, I'll get off and I'll be like, man, I don't, am I really a podcaster? Like, what am I doing? Like, this is definitely fun for me, but I have felt that before. Like, who wants to listen to Jake? Like, who wants to, you feel that. So
Yes.
how do
Yeah.
where do you see that show up in the business you're in? How do you deal with it yourself, or help others navigate through it?
Yes, it shows up. I mean, I think it shows up and I always say, like, entrepreneurship is a very lonely road often, right? And we can get really, really in our heads. So, again, because your road is not the same as anyone else's, even if you want to look at another podcaster, you
Yeah.
have a other plate spinning that they don't, and vice versa, right? So, um, imposter syndrome to me is so much about, in my experience, because this could be a sweeping statement, but is so much about, like, really digging at what's at deeper at play. So to me, often imposter syndrome is because I'm feeling like I didn't nail it, or I'm feeling like whatever I'm giving my time to isn't in flow and, like, setting my soul on fire. Like, I'm not engaged in it. So then it starts to make me question myself, and is this truly who I am? Do I really have this to offer? How did I get here? All those things. And so for me, and with coaching, I've learned to pause and ask myself those questions when I'm going there. Even when I get really self-critical or really judgy in my head, I just pause and ask myself, like, what's really at the root of this? Is this a confidence issue? Is this is this a project I shouldn't have taken on? Is this something, I just kind of try to dig there and find out, why is that rising up in me? And then also, I mean, always your support system, right? Like, so often when we get in these mental spaces, these funks, if we don't pull someone we trust into it, we can stay there way longer than if we pull someone we trust or hire someone to come into it and be like, why do I keep hitting this wall? Why does this keep coming up in me? Because emotional health is so important. So me, it's like one of my top passions, but emotional health comes from building that confidence muscle and being like, okay, I'm really confident over here, but I could either gain skills here or hire someone. My
Right.
key you'll hear is, if it's not really making you alive, then find someone who it does make alive. Like, my assistant absolutely 100% loves serving in the background. It is her greatest joy. She does not want to be in the front. Like, she's done businesses, it's not her jam. But her passion is, give me all the things that don't make you alive and happy, and focus in on those. And so there are people who feel really gifted in that way. It's just finding those people. Sorry, that was a side tangent. So tell me, like, for you, when you're hitting imposter syndrome, can you see trends behind it? Can you see, like, oh, it's usually at this point, it's because of these multiple things? Because often it can be, in my experience, it can not just be work related. It could be, like, relational related, whether it's in the house or with friendships, like that's already wearing me down. So then I get really in my head of like, and I'm failing at this, or this didn't turn out the way I wanted it to.
Yeah. I've contemplated this a lot. I have narrowed it down to three things happening in my life
Great.
at any given time that makes me feel that way. And I try to acknowledge if this is one of the situations. One, probably like you, I am a multiple plate spinner. I have lots of stuff going on at once. I own and manage a consulting firm. I advise a lot of different businesses. I consult several businesses. I do some coaching. I have a podcast. My wife has a business and I help her with that. So here's all these things that are going on. And when I've got too much, like when Jake of the past oversold the calendar of Jake of the future,
Mhm.
um and I had some kind of life event that showed up. Oh yeah, here, by the way, they just announced a lacrosse camp. Like, oh, okay, so now this is like a pick up and drop off and like a whole thing that I have to work into the schedule now. I start looking for things to eliminate. But when I
Mhm.
go back and start looking at things to eliminate, sometimes like I will this podcast comes up on a regular basis. I love it, right?
Yep.
This is a passion that I enjoy doing, but sometimes I'm like, is my heart really in this? Like I start asking myself all these questions and like, and then just depending on how I'm feeling for the day, you can just get into that, like that death
Yeah.
spiral. And like
Yeah.
by the end of it, you're like, why did I even start this in the first place? And then, and then finally, like you're getting ready to delete the whole thing. And then you're like, oh yeah, I really do enjoy doing this. Like, how did I, how did I get here? Just because, because this thing popped up and then you see you have a whole schedule filled out and sponsorships and some other things. You're like, I don't know. I think I'm going to stick with it and move forward. So I think that's number one. I think number two, you talked about ebb and flows. When I get into one of those states where things are static, those kind of like idle hands, I start toying with stuff. I start like, and then when the more that I'm starting to turn knobs and turn variables, the more that I start to lose confidence in the way that I was operating in the first place. I think some of it comes
Mhm.
from not having really clear expectations about what these things mean to me in my life and why I'm doing certain things. And then
Mhm.
that will create some imposter syndrome because then I'll start second guessing the way that the third is when I make social media content.
Okay.
Anything for social media, there's I have still such a self-conscious kind of perspective. I have a media a guy, shout out to Chance, who's always been on this podcast since day one. He's always done a great job of listening to the episodes and helping me pick pieces that highlight the guests that come out and those types of things. I do some coaching as well, so I'll go out and I'll put yeah, I started with some of the motivational quotes here and there. Sometimes I'll just post some perspective on life. It's how I feel. It's genuinely rooted into who I am. There's an aspect of vulnerability to it that still
Mhm.
makes me uncomfortable. But then when you put it out there, you understand that you're inviting individuals to come into your life in some way and
Yeah.
to look under the rocks and to investigate and inspect you. And sometimes you just don't feel like that, because you might be out of balance. And that's not what coaching does not equal. The individual that you're talking to is 100% dialed in all the time. And when I'm self-conscious about what's going on in my life, and then I'm telling people, hey, I'm here to help you grow. I'm here to help support you. I'm here to do these things. I feel like I'm an imposter sometimes. And then I talk to people who, built 9-figure businesses that are coaches, and they're like, dude, I am always adjusting knobs. I am always working on myself. This is not I'm done, I'm healed, I move forward. And that always resets my perspective, but it's hard not to feel that way. So those are kind of like my three areas on my little tangent here.
I love that. You have so much awareness around it, and awareness is our key to growth, right? So if we can't identify why it's coming up, then we do spiral, we get paralyzed. I mean, I teach so many women on comparison and how it really, that famous quote, like it just really is a thief. It just freezes us up. And so even with self-confidence, and I really wanted to say something about the social media because that is literally where I work mostly is on
Yeah.
social media. That's how I've built where I've built. Authenticity is what people are starving for. Like they don't want to see the like trendy posts. They want to see the insides and outs and hear your voice. And, they don't want it to be framed in a certain light. And
Yeah.
so, and
It's
that's I
it's so
know.
funny that you say this, because it's like television used to be our model for the way that we communicate through digital mediums. So like commercials were ways that you sold things. And it's
Yeah.
always like, hi,
Yeah.
I'm Bob Parker. Welcome to Bob's Auto, blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you what you're going to get when you come to Bob's Auto, blah, blah, blah. Like, here's a
Totally.
1922 Chevy. Here's a, and like that, it was so scripted. And then we had this reality TV thing that people wanted to see. And all of a sudden there was this, what are they going to say next mentality that kind of
Mhm.
like popped up. And now all of that is scripted,
Yeah.
right? Or it feels at least like the situations
Oh,
are scripted. So
absolutely.
that starvation of, hey, people sent a signal that they wanted this thing. They wanted to see real people interacting in these types of situations. It's so hard to trust if you're being duped or not. It's so hard to understand what people's intentions are. People want real people, just like you're
Yeah,
saying.
absolutely. I think we're changing again the narrative, which we do as a culture all the time. Like, oh, we wanted this. We really liked laughing at people's explosive behaviors on reality TV. Oh no,
Yeah.
we want it more scripted. But with like Insta fame and all the fake lives out there, the trying so hard, I have found more and more people want the real. They want, who are you? What are you about? What's your passion? What does your messy house look like? What does, like, I think you have a great post writing about imposter syndrome. And like,
Yeah.
here's the three things that cause it in my life. An overbooked schedule will cause anyone to go down the rabbit hole. My husband always says it's a slippery slide in our head, right? Like a big water slide.
Oh
Like
yeah.
once you're on it, there is no getting off until the end of it, unless you have tools. And when you can build your toolbox of like, okay, how do, like you said, then I talk to my friends who are like, I'm always tweaking things. And we should be, as entrepreneurs, we should always be looking at what's not working and what's working, and yes, does that make us feel insecure? Like, why didn't I get that before? How come I didn't tweak that earlier? But it's that tension. We just live in this tension of both and, where it's like it can both be good and it can be challenging. It can, like, they can coexist, instead of it being like, oh, why am I in my head? It can be like, what is this feeling teaching me? What do I have to learn in this moment, so that A, maybe I don't repeat it, or B, I heal something that's really, really popping up for me, that's deep rooted, or C, I can learn to shift my perspective, like you said. And that's where I think other voices are so helpful. Like your friend's just like, yeah, dude, I'm always doing that. Why
Yeah.
wouldn't you be? And you're like, oh, it's not just me. And again, like, this can be so lonely and like head to the ground when you're building your own things, that like popping up for air and getting other people involved in it, then you're like, oh, we're on the same path. Like I had a total I call them a meltdown. And I usually have them about quarterly, where I'm so in my head and I'm
Yeah.
really self-critical. And I was one of my business partners slash best friends. I had just texted her and said, I'm in such a funk. You do not want to talk to me today. And she goes, no, we're talking like in 5 minutes. And it was so funny to just say it all out loud to her, and then be like, why am I being so hard on myself?
Oh,
Like, what the heck? I would, if anyone was talking to themselves that way in my life, like a friend, I would be like, girl, no, none of that's true. No, that's not true. So, but it was just getting it almost out of my brain and my body.
uh,
And then even accepting what was there. Like, I always feel like what was there for me was me realizing that I was holding on so tight to thinking this new business was going to look a certain way, and it didn't yet. And so that was keeping me back from moving forward, because I was holding on to this idea instead of being like, okay, I'm open-handed, I'm open-minded. What do I need to see, or what do I need to focus on, or what do I need to release, so that that's not like a chain on my ankle? And
yeah.
I did. I was able to say, this looks different than I thought. It's still successful. It's still moving forward. I need to change my expectations, like you said.
Absolutely. And I love what you're saying about just getting it out, because so I told you I do some high performance coaching, some executive coaching.
Yes.
And I have a term when I see somebody's like really emotionally constipated. Um
Yes.
um when they see they're holding back, and they're, typically this is like an executive of an organization they don't
Yes.
own, right? So this is
Yes.
a VP or higher. I try to have these corporate confessionals,
I
right?
love
So
it.
it's just like, hey, like this is think Catholic Church, confessional
Yes,
booth, those types of things.
totally.
Like,
Yes.
what are you holding on to right now that's not serving you? Right? Like
Yes.
what viewpoints about yourself, what viewpoints about this business, what, we don't have, I try not to get into people's lives too much, but like, that definitely weaves
It
itself
comes in.
into the
Yes.
balance. So we do have to acknowledge some things that are happening there. But the reality is that a lot of people kind of understand where their insufficiencies are. They
Mhm.
understand where they're failing, either their team or the business that they're working for. And they understand probably the path to fixing it as well. But like just taking that minute to get it off their chest and like let it breathe for a minute, and
Yes.
then hold space for it and give themselves some grace, and then pick those pieces back up and say, oh yeah, I am a skilled professional that made it this far in my career. And oh
Yes.
yeah, I do have a lot of value to give. And yeah, I'm probably under communicating here, and I'm probably micromanaging here, and I'm probably, here's all these behaviors that I'm doing. And actually, this is how the organization needs me to move forward in
Yeah.
order to help them optimize my team, or the alignment to the strategic imperatives, or whatever's going on. And I love seeing people work through that. I
Mhm.
know it's difficult to do it on my own. I try to coach myself sometimes, but anytime that I get into those situations, I always seek outside eyes. I buy coaching. I
Right.
get coaching every single year. Every year I go find a different coach that focuses in a different area that I know I'm sufficient in, and I go and get that type of coaching.
That's
So
awesome.
that said, you're coaching quite a bit today, correct?
Yeah.
And so who are those individuals that are coming to you, and who are you serving most today? Like those problems, just like I talked through, like, I have a hard time sometimes coaching myself through certain things. I would go and look for X, Y, and Z. Who's coming to you right now?
So my main clients are entrepreneurial women and any leaders or people who've built a six-figure income in the MLM direct sales world. That was my jam. And I know the obstacles again of the kind of pressures and the lonely road of it, that and like you said, there's so much emotional constipation, right? When you're up in your head, it's like there's so much. I love that term. So those are really where I like to focus. And I think we really hone in on a ton for me is values, starting with your values. Because when you really understand your values, you can align and build your life around those so that there is joy in everything. Instead of it feeling like I'm so stressed, my schedule's so busy. And maybe because one of their values is quiet, like they need a sufficient amount of quiet, and so my values are communication, connection, and collaboration. And so I really only say yes to things that include at least 2 out of 3 of those values. So podcasting, we're collaborating, we're connecting, we're communicating. It's in alignment with my values. If it's not in alignment with those, I shed those things as quickly as possible. Of course, there's things that you have to do in life because there's just the nitty gritty of life, right? But overall, when you can shrink down to your value system, you can make so many decisions quicker. Like yeses are faster and they're a true yes, and no's are quicker because you're like, nope, that doesn't align with what I value the most. And I think our power, our superpower comes when we really hone down and align our life with what moves us. And that is generally our values. So that's kind of the hugest piece. And then we really build confidence tools as well, because as you said, we all really can get stuck in these voices and these spaces, and having a toolbox to really pull from and say, oh no, but the truth is I've been successful here and I've built this and I'm doing this. And, I think sometimes it's just that perspective shift that we all need, but we need to be out, like you said, self-coach ourselves. That's always my goal in a coaching partnership is I want to teach you how to coach yourself long-term up here and here. Um, and then also self-care is a huge focus for me with, especially working at home moms and entrepreneurs. Self-care can be the first thing to fall off, and it's actually the most nurturing thing we need. So learning how to pocket that in your day has been my passion for a long time, because I had to learn, like, where do I fit in 15 minutes of movement? where, because 15 minutes in the beginning when you're first building or it's really taking off and you're in that busy season feels impossible to give, right?
Oh yeah.
But if you can start realizing 15 minutes isn't really a big deal, it really isn't. And if it clears space for creativity to flow and calm to come, then that 15 minutes is the best thing you did for yourself all day. So those are kind of my niche areas. And I love watching, like you said, I love watching the process of someone just own and see who they are and come more fully into it.
Uh,
So that's the
I'm,
gift in coaching.
I hate to say that I'm coaching my wife in business because, I don't think she's having that. She's very coachable, but we don't have a formalized relationship,
Yeah.
coaching relationship. But I do weigh in when she asks me to. And, she, started doing permanent makeup about a year ago, started doing eyebrows and eyeliners. She started
Love
doing
that.
tiny tattoos. She has a little retail space out here in Middleton, where I live in Idaho. And, I'm so excited. And you're talking about watching people kind of break through and
Mm-hmm.
grow. And I've seen it with people that I'm not necessarily deeply emotionally connected to in the way that I'm connected to my wife, right? And then be able to
Yes.
see somebody you care about so much find their stride in life and find that balance and find the things that they're passionate about and to make very clear, decisive statements about what they're going to do, not what
Mm-hmm.
they want to do, and
Mm-hmm.
watching them reflect and be proud of things that they've done.
Yes.
When my wife she had an x-ray career. She was an x-ray tech, a mammo
Okay.
tech, CT. She's the smartest person I know. She got 2 bachelor's degrees in 3.5 years, just busted her ass in school, had this
Wow.
whole degree, worked nights while I was still finishing up college and while I was starting my career, and definitely propped us up, supported us,
Mm-hmm.
ensured that financially we actually, she was winning the bread
Yep.
for a little while there, which I'm so thankful for. And then she sacrificed that aspect of her, the part of her that knew that she was going to work for so long in order to stay home with our children because we had a really terrible daycare experience.
Yep.
Maybe I'll save that for a separate podcast one day, but it was absolutely insane.
Yes. It only
Um,
takes one.
it only takes one. And so she's like, you know what, I'm going to do this for like a year. And then she ended up being 5 or 6. And then she went through this period of time where she just didn't know. She didn't know what she was going to go back and do. As COVID was happening, she didn't really want to step back into healthcare,
Mhm.
for a variety of reasons. Actually, she was actually compelled to want to go to it, as a lot of people who were in the healthcare profession were. And then a lot of the feedback that she got from people that were currently in it was like, hey, it's gotten very bureaucratic and administrative and very difficult to make a schedule that you're desiring. So she got into this space. Long story short, I've seen her grow a tremendous amount, and it's very cool. I'm wondering about yourself, somebody who has now gone through having children, got back into working, found a lot of success as an entrepreneur in this space, has gone through a tremendous amount of growth. Where are you growing today?
I
Like
love that.
what is it? Because I know, like, I look at her and she's like very early on her professional growth journey, and at some point in time she's going to have so much ownership over what she's done and who she is in that space. I imagine probably in a position that you are today,
Yes.
that she can thoughtfully set that marker and purposefully really grow toward an anchor out there. So where's yours?
So it's so interesting you're asking that, but I love your wife's journey. I'm so excited for her. And I can relate really quickly because my husband's been home with our kids, right? So we partner, I work from home, but we partner in parenting and he really carries a large load of it. And he's definitely in that exact space, like, and he's an x-ray tech as well. And he's like,
Really?
yeah, do I
Good for
go
you.
back to work? I know we have a lot in common. Do I go back to work? What will that, do I even want to do that? Like he's in that space of kind of looking and growing and questioning. So I'm excited to hear because I know a breakthrough is coming for him. It's just figuring out, back to school. There's a lot of logistics, but
Right.
so it's really, I understand that journey of making choices that kind of hone you into your family and then being like, oh, I could dream a little. So we're
Yeah.
getting there. So for me right now, I would say, well, therapy is one of my big works. For all the things we've endured with our kids medical things. So I'm always actively in therapy, have been since I was young. But another huge business growth space for me is right now I'm building out. So I years ago built it was a mini coaching group coaching thing. And I did it before the pandemic. And during the pandemic, my clientele is literally stay-at-home moms, and all of us were home with our kids, and everyone was like, I can't get on a coaching call. I don't have time. I don't have breath in my lungs. So it kind of went on a pause, and I've always wanted to create it and really take it online, more webinar style. So I'm learning very new skills. And what I know about me is I thrive in new skills. So anytime I have to learn something new, like how do I build a funnel, or how do I build out this program so that it's high quality and really gets the attention of those I want to support and work with. So that's my big, like, okay, here we go. And I haven't taken on a new project that I've built from the ground up in a few years, honestly, because once I built content, I just used it over and over again, right? Like it's kind of wash, rinse, repeat. So what's so interesting is I always say I'm not tech savvy. I can catch on pretty quickly, but it definitely is like a space of growth and remembering like everything takes time. So it has me dreaming. It has me dreaming of the end result. It has me dreaming of what I really want to say and what I really have to give, and how that's even evolved since I first created this content. So that's my kind of growth space and my self-development space right now, business development space. So taking in a lot of great, inspiring content from others, podcasts, and reading up a ton on like positive psychology. So just kind of taking all those elements. So I'm just kind of expanding and growing even the things that I know and niching down. Also, podcasting's been a newer thing in the last few months that I've just fallen in love with. So those are kind of my growth.
Going on them or hosting them?
Going on them. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Very good.
One day I'll host them, but that's not in the wheelhouse yet.
Yeah, very good. Hey, well, this has been an absolute pleasure. Again, I started this podcast talking a little bit about, at least outwardly, just seeing you from your website, seeing you from the different posts and things that you put out, like very interesting person, very energetic.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to spend some time talking with you. Thank you for allowing me to just kind of peel back a few variables to learn from, to gain insights from. I'm sure there's some folks who are likely interested in learning more about you. Where do they find you? What's the easiest place for people to go and just understand a little bit more about you and your ecosystem, what you offer?
The easiest place to find me is Megan Maloney Reuwer on Facebook. That's kind of like where I'm most alive, but I'm also on Instagram at Sparkle Shine Megan, and then meganrosecoaching.com is my website if that's what you're looking for.
Very good. I will put those links into the podcast notes so folks can find you. We said we had a lot in common. My wife, her name is Megan. So all of the things
our paths were meant to lead to each other.
100%. And again, I want to thank you for your time today. Looking forward to connecting with you in the future, and between now and then, please be well.
Yes, you too. Thank you so much, Jake.
Cheers.